Let the magic rise.
You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
This is London Calling.
My family and I.
Ooh.
Hey, folks. And welcome to Jingly-Jangly. Yes, fake news and imaginary views for the post-truth society. Your antidote to reality with me, Olly Connelly, here in España, Euro Disneyland. Big cheers to Mona just now and all the folks here at Revolution Radio. Yeah, and today's show, Soft Soap UK. We're in the final stretch of the UK's second EU referendum, aka the general election. So how much of a soap opera is British politics? And we got Dante Magazine editor Mark Beech, regular on the show, God bless him, and JJ regular Piers Garnham, playing politics with me. Yeah, and you know what? Oh, that's enough of the intro. I'll tell you, I'm getting bored of it. I'm going to have to change that intro. I'm getting a bit dull. Another quiet news week. Yeah, okay, right. Before we start, I just want to say, folks, a bit of a kind of, production notes at the top of the show to our wonderful audience. And you know what? I've never really said that. I'm really, really grateful to folks that listen to the show. I really, really am. And I want you to know that. And I know that more of you have tried to call over the last few weeks because we never used to get anyone apart from Piers' mum calling. And we've actually had a few. The week before last, I happen to know because, I'm in with the NSA and all that. We've had calls from California, Texas, and New Jersey. That was the week before last, but we couldn't patch any of them in. We could, they were all lost. And I do apologize because we have had some problems. We've had a bit of an issue with the servers. We've been kind of cursed with that thing that hit, I don't know, I can't remember what it was called, that thing that hit. Anyway, yeah, we've had problems with the servers. So our guys here are really, really trying to work that out and sort it out. But it has meant rebuilding various stuff, including the sort of telephonic stuff. So, look, if you do want to call in, and if you're listening to this show, you must be at the site. So the number's there at the top on the tab for Studio B on the schedule. Do try that number. Oh my God, somebody just farted. Who just farted? Was that you, Piers?
No.
It must have been Mark. Oh, maybe it was me. I don't know.
That's a good start to the program, isn't it?
Hey, Mr. Beech, how are you, man? Good to see you.
Yes, well, indeed. Trump might be pulling out of the Paris deal, but I'm denying having done any such thing. So anyway, it's my story.
Is he not about to have that press conference in the Rose Garden about half an hour ago or something?
Yep, I see the BBC breaking news. I've not seen any of the others confirming that, yes, he has pulled out and he's going to renegotiate the deal on what he said.
Yeah, I just saw it. I just saw him saying it out loud.
There you go.
Yeah, he's pulling out. He says that it's not for America. It jeopardizes the American economy, and therefore he's not gonna be part of it.
It has to be said, from what I've heard, there has been a lot of progress made with regards reducing, sort of carbon footprint targets in the US and stuff like that. Actually, how much of an impact will this really make, or is it more symbolic? What do you reckon, Mark?
Well, the initial deal had various analysts saying that it was significant, and I'm sure that the pullout will be seen by some as being like, sort of a really serious blow to it. The US being the size that it is, I'm not sure that it'll have a massive effect. one thing that's not been really pointed out and a lot of talking about this is like how legally binding this is anyway. And like, if there is some voluntary nature to all this, it's great if everyone agrees and everyone does what they say they're going to do. But, if there's any backsliding that goes on, then arguably nothing can be done about it anyway. So good intentions are all very well. Wouldn't it be great if we all had no pollution and stuff like that? But, if people start disagreeing with it, then what's going to happen, as Trump has just done?
It has to be said that Juncker, Jean-Claude Juncker, one of the 7 unelected presidents of the EU, did kind of make that intimation earlier, saying that he wasn't sure it was quite as simple as just saying, we're not going to do it. Sorry, Piers, go on, mate.
No, sorry, I should have waited for your signal. No, I mean, I think obviously Trump's very much under the lobby of the the big oil and the kind of fossil fuel industry in America. So it's sort of and he's a shareholder in a lot of these businesses as well. So
well, he was just cozying up to the Saudis, wasn't he, as well?
Yeah, I mean, it's he'd be sort of cutting his nose off to spite his face if he sort of went with the Paris Accord. It would be like contrary to all his own investments.
I have to say, I'm interested to hear what you guys both think about this, but I personally think this whole Paris Accord is a little bit disingenuous in as much as where was the talk about, for example, growing hemp, farming hemp, which we know is an amazing material to help combat climate change? No discussion at all. And also, where is the discussion on some of the most simple, basic steps that we could take to reduce our carbon footprint, i.e. getting rid of oil-based packaging, particularly on things like our food? I mean, I recycle, obviously we all do, in my kitchen, and I've got my bins for, the organics, the plastics, the bottles, the paper, and all of them are pretty full. Actually, the bottles one could be quite large. But the plastics, it's just crazy. The amount of oil that we throw away every week in that. Should we not be looking at hemp? Should we not be looking at alternative packaging solutions or all-in-one solutions so that the entire packet is either paper or entirely plastic, i.e. easier to recycle? Things like, are these not very basic things that they're very good at eating canapes at these things, but are they actually any good at doing anything other than making sure that we're going to pay more tax?
Well, that's right. I mean, there are certain things which I still balk at, and I know I shouldn't, like, having sort of lower voltage light bulbs and stuff like that, and being told that my vacuum cleaner must be of less than a certain power, which I do rather regret. I went out of my way to find the most powerful vacuum cleaner I could as a result of that, because I thought, how dare they tell me that I should have a low power vacuum cleaner?
Dyson said that's largely to do with Bosch. And
you basically want to suck harder, don't you, Mark?
Well, no comment. But what I'm saying, there are so many other things that could be got onto this. Al Gore said exactly that. He was saying a long time ago, like, no agreement.
He doesn't use a vacuum in that way, does he? Sorry.
Well, I don't know about his vacuum or his lower. This is getting.
It's an inconvenient truth, isn't it?
His light bulbs. But anyway, well, what we do know is that Al Gore said that, there's so many other things you could talk about here, and it's just like touching the very start of what you could do with high polluters. Everyone talks about carbon pollution and this kind of stuff, but they're just like basic things that we could do in life, which wouldn't actually inconvenience us at all, and would just therefore make things so much better, and would just cut down on pollution. And I've got so much more time for a sensible approach than that, rather than Big Brother coming along and making some comment about the size of the motor I can use for whatever purpose.
Well,
which European country was it that has recently banned plastic packaging, or there have been a number of nations that are taking steps to sort of trying to sort of reduce the amount of plastic waste? I mean, I don't know whether the French have actually kind of abolished, you being able to get a plastic bag in a supermarket or anything like that. Hold on, I'm going to look it up right now. French ban plastic bags. And
I know Sweden.
Well, why don't you look that up, Piers?
Yeah. Yes,
Sweden
but France
yeah.
becomes the first country to ban plastic plates and cutlery. That's it. So, I mean,
That is a good idea.
Yeah, so there are sort of steps, incremental steps being taken by some of our European cousins to sort of to try and reduce the amount of oil-based plastic wastage. I mean, we all know about the giant island in the Pacific that's made entirely of plastic. I mean, they should be sending ships out there to collect it all up and recycle it. I mean, it's it's an industry in itself. There must be some way of recycling it and turning it into something that they can actually utilize or sell.
I heard about this something like a 19 or 18-year-old girl, I can't remember from where, who has invented some kind of a boat which basically does it's a bot. It does its own thing, and it goes around in circles, pulling this stuff in and somehow regurgitating it. And she's about 19 or something. Incredible. So there are innovations.
Yes. Which can be done. I was just thinking a while ago. Then this is name dropping. What the hell is? I got to interview Damon Albarn, and we were talking about one of his projects after Blur, and he'd done Gorillaz.
Yeah. Cool.
Gorillaz did an album which is all about plastic beach and stuff, and about the amount of pollution that washes up. You can go to the most remote beach in the world, and you'll find that it's like covered in stuff and bottle tops from Arkansas or whatever it might happen to be. It's just that was really
floating nuclear reactors from Fukushima.
The point being that like these innocuous bottle tops are there, and they won't just stay there for a bit. They'll stay there for as long as the Earth is, almost, because of the stuff they're made out of. They just will not decompose. And you think about that, and that really is very sad. If you go to like the most remote beach in the world, it's still got all this junk washing up on the shore.
It won't decompose. It's a bit like Henry Kissinger when you think about it.
Washing up on the shoreline. Yeah. You just go down to your beach, and there he is, Henry Kissinger. No.
Talking of beaches, Mark Beech, I want to give him a proper intro. I think Piers is pretty well known around these parts. Mark is the editor of Dante Magazine, International Arts, Current Affairs and Lifestyle, in print and online at dantemag.com. Contributor to four, author of 4 books. Go on, mate. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I love it. Carry on. Yeah, I like it. Yeah,
good. Excellent.
Carry on for the rest of the 2 hours doing that, and that's fine by me.
Just one giant plug for Dante.
I'll tell you, Mark is just an old hack, really blessed. But he has got his own hair. He's in good condition. No time wasters or tire kickers, please. First to see will buy. Mark Beech. And we know Piers. I'm
yes,
sorry.
He has got a really good head of hair. I'm quite jealous of him already. I'm becoming. Ollie and I are becoming increasingly follically challenged as the years go by, and we're always jealous of our contemporaries who seem to have sort of not only retained their hair but also don't seem to be going very grey either. So good on you, Mark. Well done.
I've got quite grey, but you can't tell because I'm blonde. It's quite useful cover, but. Yes. Anyway,
Ollie, it's your eyebrows that worry me. It's like he grows his eyebrows so long they're like sort of tentacles. Sort of like
comb them over.
I think they
just as well we've all got a face for radio and we're all here on the
radio. He's picking up signals from the cosmos through them. I'm sure. It's like it's a bit like Hercules. When he had his hair cut, he lost all his power. I think if Ollie cut his eyebrows off, he wouldn't be able to think straight.
That's right. Yeah.
So I've got to say that this is you gave a mention of Dante there, and it is very funny really because we're talking about this climate thing at the top here as well. We should because it's in the news. And we've got a piece in the one that's coming out. It's by a veteran U.S. Political reporter. She's mainly Britain broadcast called Helen Horst, and she's written a piece which is headline, "Well, what if I told you that?" And it's all about how people are printing stuff, and it's all about the myths and reality we're going to be talking about in the show a bit. But she had a piece in it, and we cut it out because we thought that it was about the Paris Agreement, and it was saying exactly that stuff that we're saying. You have all this younger guy saying you can't do that because it's going to break the law, and she's saying, but what if I told you that? I've spoken to a number of constitutional lawyers, and they're saying this is nonsense. It's not actually law for the most part. It's mainly
sounds a bit like Article 50 then.
Well, Well,
Yeah.
exactly, and she does say, and we have put this in the piece because, like, this is.
What are these, all French treaties or something? Sorry, I know that the French are
but
politically they're great.
Yeah, Brexit. She says, well, what about that? And there is an argument. These guys, and she spoke to a guy in London. She spoke to a guy in Washington. Hasn't spoken to anyone in Brussels on this, but saying, what could Britain do? And they're saying, well, in actual fact, if all things got really nasty, they could just say, we're out of it. We're walking away.
Yeah, you're talking about Brexit now, Mark. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm just making the parallel between this and the Paris Agreement.
Yeah.
Because there's some nonsense being talked about. This is the law, and you can't do this stuff. People who walk away from these agreements are going to end up maybe as international pariahs. They're not going to be liked for a lot of reasons.
Yeah,
but what are the other people going to do?
Reputation.
Yeah. You can't exactly declare war. So it's very interesting. I don't know. Hopefully, then everything can be sorted out in an amicable fashion on Brexit, as with the Paris Agreement. But at the end of the day, it is really quite sobering that if these lawyers, they're paid to be lawyers and do it stuff, are actually saying, well, people could walk away from this. They could just say, sod it, we don't like it, and we're going. Bye. And,
I have to say that to me is a big reason why the EU and the Brits, I mean, everybody should, but be more reasonable and not be flouting these ridiculous price tags around. I mean, I know we're opening the negotiations and all the rest of it, but I think we've got to be a bit realistic. I mean, I'm not saying that Britain doesn't have some responsibilities, moral responsibilities, really, in terms of some of the things that, we kind of helped set up, or at least we didn't veto. But on the other hand, it does seem very, very silly to me. One quote I heard, somebody, when the referendum first happened, one quote I heard from one of these guys, it wasn't Tusk, I think it was Tusk's deputy or somebody. He reckoned that Britain owed 600 billion, 0.6 of a trillion. I mean, just absolute. I mean, he clearly got his figure wrong. Yeah, he made a mistake there. He did a Diane Abbott. Yeah, but on the other hand, I mean, just come on, don't be so ridiculous. Let's try and be mature about this.
Tusk's like sort of Dr. Evil, where Evil comes back from the 60s or whatever, and he's trying to come up with a ransom figure, and he says $1 million. Everybody's laughing at him.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
What about $1 billion? That's better. You're getting there. Yeah, that's right.
$1 billion.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
but for those in the States who wouldn't be watching this, or would probably wonder we're probably talking like some strange language, but the
I'd say they're getting used to it on this show.
This is the guy who leads the UKIP, his independence party, was being interviewed on TV last night, and he's suggesting that,
Nigel Farage's successor, actually a bit long, but.
And basically he's saying that, it should be the other way around. We've paid in so much, that's as in the UK's paid in so much, that he'd come up with a figure of something similar to that. It was it was huge. It was so many billion that we've paid in. We've already paid in enough, and we've actually got some tied up in, the European Bank and the settlements and stuff like that.
I mean, just those bottles of wine.
We should have money back. We should not be paying money in.
He says. Okay. Sorry, Mark. Sorry, I get excited.
I know, exactly. But anyway, I mean, ultimately, what do you prove with money? You can sort of turn it around, owing or not a million or billion. What's that between friends or not? Hey, but I thought Helen Horst's piece was really interesting. She said, well, if in the same way as we've got this with Paris, the bit we cut out from a story, but the bit we kept in, Britain could ultimately just say, that's it. You've given an unreasonable demand, and we don't think this is fair.
Yeah, this is all just a game of rhetoric. I mean, it's just hot air. The whole.
It does go to show what a nonsense politics actually can be when it comes to it. That actually you do need good business people at the helm when it comes to trade negotiations.
Well,
I'm not sure that he is, but
well, if it compromises making a big buck, he won't. It's all about making the big buck with Donald Trump, isn't it? And never mind the environment or anything, that might actually have long-term, effects on us all. As long as he can, up the shareholders' profits, in the short term, in the first quarter, that's all that really matters.
Well, of course, what I would say is that, it's about, sticking up for American people and American jobs and stuff like that, however much you buy into that. But he has actually got a point, is if you take away some of these environmental controls in the short term, then you think about, greenhouse gas emissions and all that stuff, they'll go up, but it will actually save American jobs. And, some of those power stations will keep people. In the long term, then obviously if you carry on with carbon pollution, it's going to have a devastating effect, not just on the US, but everywhere. But, it's...
However, if we clearly man is having an effect on global climate change, but also...
I don't know, mate. I don't know. I hear that, and I hear that to deny it, I am some kind of, xenophobic, probably. Well, and I don't know. But what I'm just saying, I personally, I would like to have leaders that I can trust, because I cannot evaluate the truth about the whole climate question. Well, I cannot evaluate it because, you know what? Frankly, I'm not that bright. I do not have a host of ologies that I think you would realistically need to understand this enormous
there's other data.
No? Is that unfair to say that?
No, I think you're right, but there's also other data suggesting that all the planets in our solar system are warming up. There's global warming occurring in all the planets. You've got planets like Pluto and Neptune that are developing differences in their atmospheres and due to temperature increases. So there seems to be something happening on a solar system level, that's affecting all the planets in orbit around our sun that's causing a heating. So it's not entirely just down to man's polluting nature. Obviously that does have a negative effect on our environment, but there are also bigger things of a greater scale, that also factor into the equation that are on much longer cyclical type of timetables. That cause.
Look, guys, I'm not at all bored by this topic, really, honestly. I'm not. I'm just suggesting that we've got Mark here for the hour. Mark, we've got you till for another 40 minutes, yeah?
Yes, indeed. Yes. So
okay, well, you make use of him.
Yeah, exactly. Now we're going to pick your brain. Yes, indeed. So let's get into this. Let's get into this UK politics thing. Guys, did you both see the debate the other night?
I watched some of it.
Yeah, I saw all of it, actually. Yeah, for my sins. Yeah.
What did you think, Mark? What was your takeout?
This is you're talking about the Cambridge one, where you had the 7 politicians, including one non-leader in the shape of the Home Secretary standing in for Theresa May. Yeah,
that's right. Now the Prime Minister declined to turn up, as did the Labour leader, the leader of the opposition, to this debate that was put on by the BBC in Cambridge, and which is well, I was going to talk about the audience. We'll come on to that. So we had 7 party leaders apart from the Tory one. Corbyn at the last minute turned around and said, actually, I will turn up. I have to say, I like Corbyn, yeah, but I think it was a very cynical move, because it was quite obvious that he did a great job at wrong footing Theresa May, who looked like a total arse. And not
you mean Amber Rudd, not Theresa May.
Theresa May. She
could have been there. Yeah.
So the Home Secretary took her place, Amber Rudd. Yeah. And apparently she just lost her dad a couple of days before as well. So I thought it was, Anyway.
Details. No, but yeah, I thought Amber was doing a brave job in trying to hold the fort, but she was obviously struggling. She had got a lot of hostile people in the audience against her, and the others relentlessly ganged up against her. And it wasn't her fault that she was standing in for Theresa May, because Theresa May had said no, and she'd said no incidentally. Do
you think Theresa May was right, Mark, or what do you think about that decision? And from Corbyn.
I was very much of two minds when she first said it, because I was going to say that she actually said that right at the very start of the campaign. It was almost one of the first things she'd said in media guidance, is because the BBC immediately said, we're going to have our usual thing. She said, no, I'm not going to do it. Then that was completely clear. And she's whatever she has changed her mind on, holding an election or the other taxes and stuff like that, she has held firm on that. And in some ways, that looked initially it could have been a mistake, but it did look a bit like a smart move. She'd let the others just squabble, and she'd kind of rise above it and say that I'm, above all that stuff. I'm being statesmanlike and things.
They did squabble, didn't they?
They did squabble.
Fallon was a major squabbler, and actually, I thought that Corbyn came off quite well. I thought he looked fairly, relaxed. He calls himself Mr. Zen, doesn't he? And he did look pretty zen. He was very good at making sure that people didn't interrupt him as well. He's got a very good way of making people look, kind of getting in the way. And Amber Rudd, I thought that she was fairly good as well in terms of not popular, but I thought that she was good in terms of not interrupting people. But the others, who was it? We had SNP, the Scottish National Party, Robertson bloke, the Nicola Sturgeon's deputy. We had Paul Nuttall from UKIP. We had the Green lady. I can't remember her name. Nice lady. Useless policies.
Caroline,
We had the Plaid Cymru. The Welsh SNP type party, and we had the Liberal Democrat guy. Yes. No. The other bloke, Fallon.
Sorry. Yeah, exactly. I beg your pardon.
Yeah.
But yes,
he didn't mention Jesus once, did he?
I thought there was a lot of squabbling going on. In fact, I would have to say that Tory friends of mine who watched it said that they were actually rather disappointed that we've got Jeremy Corbyn doing a pretty good job at staying cool and stuff like that, and being a bit statesmanlike and things. And what it's been said right to the received wisdom from the beginning of the campaign is basically Theresa May is going to be so far in front that unless she really messes up, she's going to win it. And Corbyn needs to do an awful lot to catch up. But at least he played that one quite well. Again,
she reckoned to be about 25 points ahead, and now at the best polls that were going. And now, according to the worst polls that are going, she's reckoned to be losing seats. I mean, we know the deal with polls in the UK over Brexit, over Scotland, and in the US over Trump. We know that polls can be an utter lot of old cack, a bit like credit agencies that value junk bonds in Greece at AAA.
But the thing is that, certainly it got to a situation that if Theresa May loses, it would be the most catastrophic series of polls ever. It would be not like Brexit. It wouldn't be like Trump. They'd be just so far out of line. It would just be fantastic. Now, of course, things can change in the course of the campaign from the 25% lead she had some weeks ago. Things can change in an election campaign, but it would still be like sort of a real shock to the political system in extremis if Theresa May loses a majority or something like that. It would just be amazing.
She's got a majority of 16 seats, something like that. Is it something like that?
I forget the actual figure.
More or less.
Someone could do it, but the prediction was
the majority in a house of about 600 seats, 650 odd seats.
Yeah, and the most optimistic one was saying that she could have a majority of 160, which, when you think about it, is that's colossal. That's that's more than Margaret Thatcher had. Margaret Thatcher had a majority of 130 or something from recollection. So it would be
after she sang the Belgrano.
Well, but I must say that there is one thing to think about all this. I'll shut up in a second, but I think it's probably worthwhile saying is that if she did have a majority of that size, would she really be so strong? Because I think there'll be quite a few Tory MPs, particularly on the right, but some on the left probably also, who would probably be more inclined to rebel. They know that have no chance of ever getting a ministerial post, because there's only a certain number of ministerial posts out there, and they just feel, oh, what the heck. So if she came out with some controversial policy, they probably would rebel. So she'd still get
that. Is through, a nice theory.
It's
something I wonder myself, but actually I wonder conversely, Mark, if Now I personally, reading between the lines, I reckon she's looking at between 50 and 60 majority, 50 or 60 seats, which is what, just under 10% of the House. And I would have thought that with that, she's got to be careful. If she had a bigger majority, conversely to your argument, to your theory there, is there not a possibility that actually she has got less room to play with and she cannot do things like, I don't know, start kicking disabled people out of their wheelchairs and what else has she been doing?
The stuff in the manifesto is just so extraordinary.
Stuff like that. She might not be able to get away with that. But on the other hand, if she did have a big majority, maybe she could. Maybe she could say, you know what, we've decided to get rid of the pension at, you know, the retirement age at 65. And what we're going to do instead is euthanize you.
No, I think she's going to get people with Alzheimer's to work on the London Underground. Or I think she's already done that, actually.
No comment on that one.
She's lovely, though. She's nice. She's
when you've got a manifesto, then like you've always got a chance. It's your shop window. It's, you know, so really you don't want to say lots of bad things. You don't have to. You need to tell people.
Why did she? Why did she, Mark?
I think
it's like she wanted to throw this election.
She wanted to
almost.
Well, that is an argument, and it's an argument that you've been like putting for a little while. Perhaps that was the whole name behind it. I think it was just a misunderstanding. It had been drafted by a few people, and she didn't realise. She thought that she'd show that she's so responsible. We'll get rid of the triple lock. We'll get rid of the ideas that like
triple lock is basically a way to ensure that elderly people get an index related linked pension. Something that keeps up with inflation more or less.
And we'll get rid of the Cameron thing as well on like, you know, we won't raise money on national insurance for self-employed. And so by doing that, it's all probably to do with Philip Hammond, which show like how incredibly responsible we are. We're going to be fiscally prudent.
He's the chancellor, the finance bloke.
Yeah, so we're going to be strong and stable and all this stuff, which, as we know, is one phrase that's been done to absolute death, which is a shame. But all of that was potentially good. But of course, immediately people go through the manifesto, they spot this stuff and start saying, hang on, so what does it mean if you've got like a relative who's got Alzheimer's? Does it mean that like they're going to have to lose their house to pay for care? And I don't think that whether it's political naivety or not a level of detail, that she didn't realize that this was going to actually, rather than being seen as being a responsible thing, it just seemed to be irresponsible. And of course, as a result of that, to move on it and then to U-turn and then even deny that she's having a U-turn is unfortunate because, like, you know, all this about strong and stable is starting to look, you know, rather less so. Isn't it?
Yeah. Piers, what did you think of the dementia tax? Because I know you're getting on.
Sorry, who are you? Where am I? Well, I mean, to be fair, I do think the Tories are looking a bit shambolic, and part of me can't help but think that the whole thing's being done by design. You know, I mean, who's to say their Bilderberg rulers aren't sort of telling them to lose this election because the globalists think that the Labour Party are more malleable when it comes to soft Brexit. I mean, I think there's a general consensus in the country now that where the Tories are considered to be the potential hard Brexiteers, and Jeremy's lot are
hard Brexiteers, mate. You mean Brexit? There's no such thing as hard or soft Brexit. It's Brexit or not.
No, there could be hard Brexit in the sense that we, as Mark was saying earlier on, that we could just walk away from the whole thing.
That's Brexit.
Extremely hard.
That's a Brexit without a deal.
Yeah, exactly.
It's actually a WTO Brexit. World Trade Organization Brexit.
I would have to say, I think there is clearly there will be huge differences between how we do a Brexit. If we sort of roll over, and I say we in the UK, and that gives into a lot of demands from the EU, which seems unlikely, then that would seem to be a soft Brexit by any kind of definition. If we play hardball and give them a tough time and refuse to move on some of these things, then obviously, yes, you can say, well, what is hard, what is soft, but nonetheless, then clearly that we'll be going for a much harder Brexit and doing that. So I think as terms.
Well, I don't know, Mark. I mean, that referendum question was pretty simple, wasn't it? You want to get out of the European Court of Human Rights? Do you want to get out of the Eurozone? Do you want to get out of basically not being able to elect any of the presidents, sort of thing? Wasn't that basically it? Do you want to stop paying money into an unaudited enterprise, something that's never been audited, or do you want to keep going along that line? That basically was the choice.
That would be like in logic, but obviously it's not what it said on the ballot paper, did it?
No, it just said, do you want in or out on the ballot paper? I mean, it didn't complicate the issue at all. It literally said, are you in favour of staying in the European Union or leaving? I mean, it was as simple as that. Obviously, there's an enormous wealth of complication behind that very question, but that wasn't on the ballot paper. I mean, it's, yes, I personally wonder how much due diligence is going on behind the scenes in terms of, like, it's a bit like, I had a chat with my dad, and he was still under contract with a firm he was working for, and he was thinking of setting up his own business, and he was quietly going off and having chats with some of the people he was already doing business with to see if they'd transfer their business to his new, if he set up a new enterprise. But due to contractual limitations, he wasn't really supposed to be doing that, so it was all off the record. And I'm wondering whether or not similar conversations.
Well done. You just criminalized him on the radio.
It was a long time ago, and I mentioned who was involved, so it doesn't matter. I mean, he's been retired for many years.
I was going to say,
But what I'm saying is, I'm sure that the vast swathes of, I'd like to think that this is what's going on, are, in talks with countries around the globe about how we can reestablish ourselves in the global market. So they're doing their due diligence, and working out exactly what opportunities we have to trade elsewhere, and what kind of businesses and enterprises and markets and all the rest of it. So basically, they need to be doing that, and so that gives them more leverage in terms of the potential opportunity of a hard Brexit. If we're gonna be bullied, by our European cousins, and I personally don't think that situation will occur. I think a lot of it's just hot air and rhetoric at the moment. I think one of the reasons why they're making so many ridiculous demands for vast divorce settlements is because without the UK input, financial input, the European model ceases to work. I mean,
what you mean, the European model of wealth transferal, which is basically what it is.
Yes, I mean, the UK economy is too big and too beneficial to the European model to be able to manage without. And at the moment, the likes of Juncker and his clan are throwing all their toys out of the pram, because they are potentially about to lose one of their main cash cows. And which keeps the party in the European
British
Parliament
people
propped up.
Somebody has to pay for all those sponsored by the EU signs.
Keeps the champagne flowing, it's so. But I'd imagine there's a lot of negotiation and chats going on here, there, and everywhere at the moment. So personally, we could be far better off outside it. If we actually work out a proper business solutions.
Okay, darling, we talk about this so much. Look, how much of a soap is it then? We've covered, are they really looking at Brexit, or is it a bit of a smokescreen? Well, from the Conservative point of view, Mark, maybe you'd like to tell us kind of a little bit what happened with Cameron in the first place with this calling the referendum, because I honestly think that he was completely wrong-stepped by his own backbenchers and Nigel Farage. But I have been reading some fascinating theories, and I love my conspiracy theories in the last few days, saying that no, it was absolutely allowed that Brexit would happen, and Trump, as some kind of a way to placate the right, to make them think, oh yeah, we're winning this kind of, versus globalism type battle, but actually then to have the carpet pulled from underneath us, perhaps with some devastating false flag, for example, that we know has happened, that we know our governments have assisted in. I mean, we know that from Operation Northwoods, what they said that they would do, killing Americans on an American soil to start a war with Cuba. We know that it happened that's how they started Vietnam. and the foreign secretary or whatever, the defense secretary of the time, apologized years later to the Vietnamese. And it came up in the Senate as well. So we know that these things are done. I just wonder, that's a very interesting conspiracy theory, that actually they did kind of know that it was in the balance and they were happy to let Brexit go. They were happy to let Trump in because actually it's irrelevant. They're going to pull the rug. There's going to be absolute chaos. This spinning plates that we call, the global financial system is going to go totally tits up. And then what do? It's like Henry Kissinger, that guy again. He'll be coming up a bit later as well when we talk more about Bilderberg, probably in the next hour. That guy said, you need the crisis. He said after the Rodney King riots in LA, one day we'll be able to, they don't want the police on the streets and all that. I mean, the army on the streets and all that. But one day, I promise you, these people, they will be grateful for seeing the troops on the streets. It's just a question of how big a problem that they see and how fearful they are. Is that a possibility, or am I mean, this is a pretty horrible train of thought, but we've seen it before.
Well, I'm listening to all this now, and one of the things you can say about this is you can come up with conspiracy theories. You can invoke all sorts of names if you want to stick in the Illuminati or whatever it might happen to be.
Yeah,
you can. I don't, because I don't honestly think so. I think there can be such things as accidents in life. It's very easy to say. I'm thinking back to a poem which was written a long time ago by Hilaire Belloc. Do you know that one?
Vietnam was more. Tonkin Bay was more than an accident, Mark, and so was Operation.
I'm thinking of the many things you mentioned there. That the David Cameron thing.
Sure.
Sir, you have disappointed us. We intended you to be, said this poem, the next Prime Minister but three. The stocks were solid, the press was squared, the middle class was quite prepared. But it didn't quite work out as we planned. I think in the case of David Cameron, he'd got a situation where he knew that one solution to try to face off with the situation he had with UKIP was to say, okay, we'll call their bluff. We'll have a referendum on this. From the polls at the time, that we know how wrong polls can be, it looked like he was going to win. So it was a fairly safe bet. I think he thought that he could do this. And
amazing that he lost that.
I know,
amazing.
Exactly. But, and things did move around a bit in the time. And, things
I
happened.
did think it would be close, though. I did think it would be close, Mark. I mean, I assumed the Brexiteers would be on the wrong side of the result.
Oh, indeed. It doesn't wipe out the argument at all. I had a series of tweets and stuff like that I had before that Brexit vote. And I've said to, I'm on record as having said to people that Britain will vote to come out of the EU. And that was based on all sorts of bits of anecdotal evidence that I had.
I agree with you. I think the vote was actually much bigger. I think the distance between Remain and Leave was much bigger. And I think a bit of manipulation, Cameron was given the go-ahead to have a referendum because there was, people were getting fed up with Tory cuts and Tory,
austerity.
Basically austerity. And so they thought that this was a potential for them to lose the next election. So they thought, well, we're going to have to throw the referendum back into the cauldron. We promised it before, and we negated on our promise. So let's give them the referendum. We'll risk it, but we can manipulate it anyway. So we'll win. And but if and it is an if there was a manipulation, then that would lend credence to the idea that far more people in Britain voted to leave than we're actually aware of.
I think of course, we must bear in mind that you've said what the question was there on the referendum paper anyway, which is quite simply, do we stay in the EU, yes or no? But on the other hand, that there are clearly a lot of people who voted, particularly in Northern England, and they were voting as a protest vote. They weren't really voting along the lines of we want to pull out of the EU. Now, how much that is the case, there was, in my view, a clear decision. And it was, if anything, it was based on the issues of immigration played a large part in that, in the case of many people who put that cross on the ballot paper, for better or worse. But that's what happened. And obviously, one thing that David Cameron couldn't have expected when he called the referendum is that his mate and my mate, because he's a friend of mine, Boris Johnson, decided to come out in favour of Brexit, which was like sort of a major bombshell, you know. And
was that genuine, Mark? Now I know you know Boris. Was that genuine? Was he true? Is he genuine? Because I'm not convinced that he's actually a Brexiteer at all. He was ashen-faced the day of the result.
He was. He looked so
at that
shocked.
podium.
It was just not true.
Well,
when he walked out of his house in the morning, he just,
I couldn't comment on that to say anymore. But like, I know that he had written an article which people do know about for the Telegraph, and he'd actually written it both ways. Like, you know, the arguments for staying in, the arguments for coming out. The one that he published was coming out with. I
so popular.
He was very clearly thinking about, like, you know, where he stood on this. He was weighing up the pros and cons.
Yeah. Well,
and
that's fair.
arguably, like, making speeches even before you get into politics at the Oxford Union. He was doing the same thing. It's like, you need to know your opponent's argument better than your own if you're really going to demolish them.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I blame him for doing that. It was a surprise, and people did say that perhaps he's only doing it given some of his comments previously for reasons of ambition. You could argue that both ways, but he made the decision he did. And Boris's decision, I'm sure, played some role in some of the percent of people going across because of his popularity. Some of those statements he made, which really did carry people when he talked about Britain's Independence Day. I'm sure that was quite enough to switch some people across who've been thinking about it, going, they're thinking, this guy's quite charismatic. He might seem a bit of a fool in some ways, but you know what? Let's go for independence. It's the same thing as you're saying, Piers. Like, you know, maybe we can be better outside.
But, okay, Mark, let me put this to you before you disappear, because it's great to have you on and have you available to talk to. What do you I mean, do you think people have, Ollie described the coming general election as the second referendum. I mean, do you think people, around the country are looking at it that way? And do you think they are sort of putting a divide between Labour and the Conservatives, saying that the Conservatives are basically going to deliver Brexit and we don't know what Labour are going to do? I mean, let's face it, the Junkers of this world have already turned around and said, you can reverse Article 50 if you want. There's nothing stopping you from just sort of saying, oh, it didn't happen. I mean, they're literally putting out all the stops now to sort of give us all opportunities to sort of, go back
keep
on
the cash flow.
Yeah. So, do you think, Mark, that the current British population are looking at this election as another referendum or not?
I would hope that they do look at it as being, a chance to give Theresa May the strong hand that she has to be able to carry it through. Where, frankly,
I agree with that.
There would be many other parties who basically would not have the strength or to be able to push through the really tough measures that are needed to do so.
Absolutely none of the others.
So, but certainly from the point of view of the other parties, then they've been trying to get away from Brexit as much as possible because it's not going to play very well for them. It's not going to play for the Labour Party. We've seen what's happened up north previously with Labour politicians who've come out, being pro-Europe, and they've not done very well. It certainly is not going to be great for the Liberal Democrats in the end. They're probably going to hold on to some. I know there'll be Lib Dems who disagree with me on that, but nonetheless, it's not the most popular of policies. It's regarded by a lot of people. We've made our decision now. Let's move on. But Theresa May.
There was a fascinating poll, Mark, just a few weeks ago. You might remember the YouGov poll that said that there were only about 22% now that in the country that still support Remain avidly. All the rest are either Brexiteers or else they've changed their minds and they've said, well, let's go with the democratic will of the country. Only 22% now support Remain, according to that. So the Lib Dems, they must be very worried.
Well, where are all these current polls, this massive gap, this massive reduction in the gap? If people are aware and are looking at this general election as a second referendum, and a Tory vote is pro-Brexit and a Labour vote is anti-Brexit, then one would assume, by what we've discussed, that the Tories will end up getting a big majority, regardless of everything we're listening to and hearing about on the telly, or in the papers.
Yeah. I think what's happened in the last week or so, though, is that and this has probably been, this really sticks in my throat to say this, is something of a success for the Labour Party in that they've managed to move the issues away from Brexit a bit and towards other things like the national health and all that, and the economy. And
they have had a very successful manifesto launch.
So, well, I think arguably it probably wasn't a successful manifesto launch, but they followed on through quite well with that. Think about all the problems about, what Diane Abbott was saying at the time, and there was some,
yeah, but she's always been an idiot.
If you do cost the manifesto, then the Institute of Fiscal Studies is saying that they've got a figure of
yeah, sure, I can see that.
Or something, whereas Labour is saying it's going to be 70 or something. It doesn't seem to compute. So, arguably that manifesto is like another longest suicide note in history to rival that Michael Foot.
You could argue that all these polls suggesting that people are accepting the democratic vote, the referendum vote from last summer, that the margin of people who are now saying, the gap has, shrunk and more people would accept Brexit now. You could argue that that's mitigating against the risk of the Tory landslide. And I personally think that a Tory landslide would tell us, would indicate that the margin was much bigger on the referendum day last summer, and that there was some kind of manipulation that took place that made it otherwise. That narrowed the margin. I'd say.
Well, I don't know about that, but it would certainly firm it up.
Yeah, I don't know. If the Tories, I don't know if the Tories will get a big majority, but if they do, I'd say that makes the whole referendum result last summer look fishy. That's my personal opinion. But there we go.
But on the other hand, it also substantiates.
Yeah, it's with that poll where, after what's happened now, if it really is the case that, the nearly 50% who said we want to stay, now actually only 20% or whatever it is are now actively saying that we think that there is a case for remain. That shows that something's changed over that period of time. So it wouldn't necessarily negate that referendum result or make it look fishy. Things change.
Well,
Mark, we've only got a few minutes left, and I do want to ask you about the other side of the coin slightly. I want to ask you about Labour. Now, I want to ask you about Labour / New Labour, because up until the election campaign, up until the election was called, Corbyn was being lambasted by all sides of the establishment, basically a kind of a centrist establishment that seems to love this war criminal Tony Blair bloke. And who is still on the Privy Council? Oh my God! And then Jeremy Corbyn is getting lambasted. On the other hand, now, of course, well, he's during the campaign, Corbyn has been increasingly praised, and I'm not surprised. He's looked pretty cool all in all, in terms of his persona, in terms of pretty much everything he said. He says he wants to follow through with Brexit as well. My question to you: when this campaign is over and Labour has lost, which is what I'm suggesting is going to happen, and probably relatively badly, he actually has had a good election, though. Can the Blairites prize him from power, or is he going to survive?
I think he will stay as leader of the Labour Party almost regardless of what happens. He will say that, what's happened in the ballot box is one thing. He will not be concerned about the MPs and whether they're voting for him. He'll say that 300,000 people voted him to be Labour leader, and that would be it. And what will probably happen then, in my assessment, and there'll be Labour people who probably disagree, is that the Labour Party will finally break up, and we will have. Yes. I don't think it's quite the Blairite faction, but it'll be the faction who believe in sort of like a more New Labour moderate approach will carry on doing what they have to do, and Corbyn will be left with a rump of socialist worker and more extreme left-wing politicians, and what will be
not the Marx
the Labour Party.
They'll all be wearing
tell me that I'm wrong. I've had this prediction for a while that Labour's, going to break up in the way that it did after the Foot catastrophe.
Yeah,
when the
Michael
SDP came into,
when Foot put his foot in it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, only the three. I think only the three of us are old enough to remember who Michael Foot was.
Oh, blimey. Hold on. Who was the guys that the Gang of Four? That was what? Jenkins, Owen,
Rogers,
Steele,
Shirley Williams. Yeah.
Shirley Williams. I liked her. I thought she was cool.
Yeah, Steele was in the Liberals, of course, but he sort of allied with the Gang of Four. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's right.
So there we go.
Yeah.
But I have done one thing just to show some, in the interests of I know we're running out of time, of fairness or whatever. I have actually downloaded the Theresa May Liar single, which is out at the moment.
Yeah, I had a listen. I've had a listen to that.
Probably get to number one, so we'll see. But anyway,
well, it's number one on the iTunes download chart, I think.
Yes. Folks, if you want to go to look at the stuff that I've got on Forbes, you'll find that I wrote a story on this yesterday. So I did indeed. Yeah, so it's a subject.
So Mark, if you go to Forbes.com and just put in Mark Beech, yeah?
Yeah, you'll find it there. Yes. Mark Beech, liar. That's me. Theresa May, and you'll see it. Yeah. There we go. Anyway, I'm sorry I can't go to the second hour of the show. Yeah.
Okay, one thing. One last question, sir. Was that debate audience in Cambridge, was it me or was it just extraordinarily biased? And they very, very pro-Corbyn, very anti, well, pretty much everybody else?
That's what a lot of Tories have been saying, and on the Telegraph, and I'm inclined to agree. I thought that, also the selection of questions that could have been rather more on Brexit, where there wasn't. They were talking about the issues such as the National Health Service and stuff like that. So it didn't really allow for an awful lot of the pro-Tory points that I'm sure Amber Rudd would want to put across.
Well. Indeed. I tell you, it's been great to have you, Mark Beech. Thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing you back on the show another time.
Yeah, join you again, guys. Thanks so much.
God bless you.
Cheers, Mark.
God bless you. Mark Beech. And we've got rid of him. So old Piers and me in the second half, we can have a big old natter behind Mark's back.
Talk about me if you want.
Oh, hey, Mark, listen, you're welcome to hang around as long as you like, mate. Anyway, we'll be back in a couple of minutes. Yeah. Go and take a pee.
Oh, we're on air, man. Yeah. We're on air. Hey, finish up, mate. Shake off. Shake off. Wait. Mate. You're like Austin Powers being a fountain or something.
Hold on.
That would be the paella you had earlier on, I presume, or your wife's cooking. I don't know what it is, but better out than it.
No, there was the. It was. Hold on. I need to come back from the toilet. Oh, whoa. There's a long corridor here. Whoa. Okay.
You are personally adding to the global warming problem. You and all the other cows out there, pumping methane into the atmosphere, creating what Steve Martin would have called the fart zone. Do you remember that sketch when he got on stage and he said, the ozone layer, above that's the fart zone. And, what's so bad about the fart zone? With the ozone layer disappearing, holes in the ozone. When the holes in the ozone appear, the farts fall back to Earth and not on their original owners. I always thought that was a really funny sketch. Yeah.
Man.
He kind of went from being really hip and cool, Steve Martin, to being sort of the complete opposite, didn't he? It was sort of, he was very funny for a while. Then he had his day, and everybody thought, nah.
Yeah, it's often like that with these guys. But I do love Steve Martin all the same. Yeah. I'll tell you, it's that bovine influence. No, I mean, this election is fascinating, isn't it, Piers? But I do wonder how much of a charade it all is. That I mean, if what's going. Okay, well, we had that debate going on yesterday, but actually, the big debate that's going on, the one that nobody's talking about, at least in the British press, is Bilderberg. Yeah, that's going on in Chantilly, Virginia now. It's got all the usual, kind of names, all the usual suspects. Yeah. From Kissinger down. There's a bunch of Trump folks, including McMaster's, that have gone as well. He's the military guy, I think, isn't he, McMaster's? I think. So I mean, that debate, I just wonder, really, that's the one that people were watching. But actually, you know what?
the real power is behind the curtain. It's at Bilderberg. And if these kind of folks, I might be wrong. I'm speculating. Yeah, I don't know. I've just got lots of questions because, they deserve. I mean, Delors said we helped Bilderberg. We basically set up the EU. It was our baby. And it's a cornerstone to global government. Jacques Delors said it. And so did Jean, what's his name? Trichet, the first president of the ECB. What do you tell me? What do you think, Piers?
Well, you're right. I mean, but these globalists are not. These globalists have never been shy about talking about their. They talk about New World Order. I mean, how many times did you hear, the Bush administration or Henry Kissinger or whoever it might be, of this ilk, talking about New World Order. New World Order, yeah, exactly. I mean, Tony Blair, Gordon Brown, they're all using that mantra, New World Order, which is part of the globalist movement, which is all about, creating sort of a homogenized global super state.
They never said that when they first said it, did they? They just kind of,
But that's what Europe is. That is, you can't do something like that overnight. You have to do it in stages. So you can say that independent, self-governed nations are a threat and could cause World War III.
They never admitted that till recently. Now, recently, they're saying that they don't even quite go that far. Has globalization been a big deceit?
Yes, I think it has. I think you could argue that we've been lied to so much over the last sort of century, since the beginning of the 20th century, and probably before, But I think, ever since the inception of the Federal Reserve Bank in 1915, I think ultimately commerce has gone down.
1915? Yeah,
carry on, sorry. I think it was 15, 15. I think ever since, and then I think Titanic sunk in... just before then, because the Astors and the Bilderbergs were sort of were on the Titanic, weren't they? And there was all this sort of talk about JP Morgan having booked a ticket and then didn't go at the last minute because
that's right. They were supposed to be opponents to the Federal Reserve that were left on the Titanic.
Sorry, I meant the
conspiracy theory.
The Guggenheims and the Astors were on board, not the Bilderberg. Sorry, I'm just getting obsessed with Bilderberg. But I don't know. Anyway, but I do think that there's been a great deal of manipulation over the course of the last century where, wars, the reasoning behind wars, as you pointed out earlier on in the first hour, we know that they cook up evidence in order to justify going to war. Tony Blair, is guilty of that, as are, the Bushes and what have you. We've been led into wars on spurious, cooked-up evidence in order to sort of justify getting in there. And we all know that, it helps to sort of keep the war machine going. I mean, let's face it. If ISIS didn't exist, who would their boogeyman be? They'd have to conjure somebody else up. Otherwise, their arms sales would just plummet. And suddenly, hundreds of billions of dollars a year would no longer be coming into the military-industrial complex's coffers. So, realistically, on the back, in the back channels, and they seriously like these terrorist organisations because they make them billions of dollars a year in arms sales. They can sell all their high-tech weaponry, to all the Saudis and other nations around the globe. And I mean, Britain, who I've always considered the 51st state, are right on the heels of America and become the second largest arms dealer in the world now.
I know. It's incredible. And it's sickening. Don't you feel sick that we condone through our voting? We are being asked, whoever wins power, unless the Green Party won the government or something, well, that's going to happen, isn't it? Whoever wins power, they're going to go straight to the Saudis and do a sweetheart deal, just like Trump, because they always do. And then you get old Charlie is rolled out, Prince Charles, he's sent down there to, I don't know, give someone a blowjob. I mean, what is going on? Why? This is so immoral. And they're killing the Yemenis. The Yemenis, I mean, there's cholera in Yemen now. There's a terrible malnutrition problem. Really, really, really awful problem. It's such a state. But Oh,
we don't have a moral.
We condone that.
We don't have any moral footing on this whatsoever. What's the right?
There were no questions about that in the debate. Actually, no. The Green.
No, somebody
lady,
did. Yeah, the Green lady did mention it.
She brought it up.
And Amber Rudd
sideswiped.
She sideswiped that one. She sort of basically said, we need to she said our military sales, we need to have a strong military industrial complex, namely, the production and development of newfangled weapons that we can sell abroad in order to have a strong, defense.
She loved it. What a charmer.
So she blamed our sales, on. She said, all our sales abroad, to the Saudis and what have you, is all to do with defence, having strong defence, home defence. What a load of absolute crap! I mean,
she is very mini-me, isn't she? She actually is rather like Theresa May. She's a kind of a nasty party too.
Yeah, they're both like female versions of Mr. Burns, in
The Simpsons.
I mean, yeah, who would be the little wormy guy? Who's the Mr. Burns kind of little wormy assistant? The one Smithers. Who would be Smithers? I mean, it would be like would that be Boris Johnson? Is Boris Johnson Theresa May's Smithers? I don't think so. I don't know which tournament
he's a backbench now.
Maybe it's her husband.
No, foreign secretary, for God's sake.
He's foreign secretary. I know. Well, when he was interviewed about all these arms sales to Saudi Arabia. A journalist asked him, said, well, don't you think it's outrageous that we're selling billions of pounds worth of arms to the Saudis, who are then going around and killing indiscriminately, thousands of innocent people? He said, well, if we don't do it, somebody else will. Do you
believe? Yeah, I agree. It beggars belief. But do you believe that money actually really does benefit the British people
No.
Any sort of degree that is can you see a difference? Do you think that anybody in their lives, in their lifestyle in the UK, just to take the government by that line and say, yeah, okay, we need to deal with the Saudis, what is the benefit to the average bloke on the street?
None whatsoever.
Apart from
that all that money goes into, well, unless they're shareholders in whatever corporations are selling, developing the weapons and then ultimately selling them. I mean, you can buy shares in weapons contractors and developers. It's in the interest of the shareholders. I mean, anybody who trades in arms dealing, stocks and shares that from arms companies, then will benefit. But
Church is doing all right then. Catholic Church will be doing all right.
I mean, we probably tax these arms dealers a little bit, probably not enough, but so some of that money will go into the government coffers. But so much money does ultimately, it is blood money.
Blood money. And not only that, but we're traitors to ourselves, because we know the Saudis have been funding ISIS and the Kuwaitis, Qatar, those two as well. We are traitors. I find it incredible. On the one hand, we're friends with these guys that are friends with our supposed enemy. I mean, okay, I think folks listening to this show, they probably got a good idea that there's a very, very strong suspicion, at least, that the CIA set up ISIS just as they did Al Qaeda.
They use the word moderates, don't they? Politicians love to use the word moderates whenever they're supplying arms to a particular terrorist group that are basically, say for example in Syria, where their main objective is to get rid of Bashar al-Assad. They want to get rid of the president. They want to control that region of the world because it's strategically very important. There's a lot of obviously a lot of natural resources there. So if they can install a puppet president there, then they can basically control that region of the world, which is obviously very strategic, sat between Russia and Western Europe, it's got nothing to do with that. So they constantly demonize Bashar al-Assad, who's probably not guilty of half the things they've convinced us of in the mainstream media.
As dictators go, he looks pretty benevolent to me, I have to say. As dictators go, yeah.
Yeah, he always comes across as quite mild-mannered. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of the chemical attacks that got blamed on him, and a lot of the atrocities that have been blamed on Bashar al-Assad have been carried out and perpetrated by proxies of the West. So they can, continue to demonize Bashar al-Assad, and obviously they do. They have armed, funded, and trained these terrorists in Syria that are anti-Assad, but they are essentially terrorist organizations. So it's like, and many of them are affiliated with Al Qaeda and ISIS. It's like they'll demonize ISIS and Al Qaeda on the one hand, and then they'll use them as a weapon to try to depose leaders who are presenting barriers to their overall reach in the Middle East. I mean, they've been constantly demonizing. Britain and America constantly demonize Syria and Iran, two countries that ultimately have no interest in trying to invade America or the UK. But because of their strategic location and the resources, the Brits and Americans are hell bent on getting their hands. I mean, that was General Wesley Clark. Stood up, as we've discussed before on this show, and said there was a plan hatched years ago, decades ago.
5 countries, was it? 7?
7, I think, 7 countries, which are, 2 of the principal countries in his list, were.
What have they done? How many have they checked off the list? Libya,
Libya, Afghanistan, Iraq.
They're now in Syria, so they're trying to tick that one off.
Syria, Iran would be 5. Where were the 2 others?
North Korea. They wanted North Korea.
No, I don't think that was. It was primarily about.
No oil in North Korea. Yeah, no good.
Well, they use the North Koreans to make amphetamines. I mean, because the CIA have been involved in the drug smoke.
Hey, bit of business. They're good at that.
Yeah, well, exactly.
Heroin poppy fields are doing superbly since the Americans took over in Afghanistan.
I think the yields have gone up massively. But I mean, this is obviously all allegedly, and but it's not. I mean, at the end of the day, the CIA have been.
Now the troops are protecting it. There's photos around.
What's the name of that main cocaine dealer from Colombia? What was his name? The chap who.
John Kerry.
No, what was his name? He was the main. There was a Netflix series about him. Oh, what was his name? He had the main cartel in the sort of 80s.
George Osborne, ex-chancellor.
Anyway,
no, he just used to sniff it.
But
I heard.
What was his name? Damn it! This is really annoying me. But anyway, his son, who's still alive, came out recently and said that his father was basically working in conjunction with the CIA.
You mean the bloke from Mexico, the drugs baron?
No, he was from Colombia. He was from Colombia, wasn't he?
I can't remember. But I know he.
Come on, he's the main. We're both going senile. Let me look him up because it's going to really bug me if I can't remember his name. Colombian drug dealer.
Yeah, it'll be at the top of the list.
Should be, yeah. Oh, here we go. Pablo Escobar, of course.
There you go.
Nice bloke. Pablo, Netflix
did you reckon he went to Bilderberg? Did he go to Bilderberg?
He was probably one of the founding members, mate. With Henry Kissinger and him like cracking out lines, together on the table. Yeah.
He's got that walking stick. It's actually an enormous cocaine straw.
Yeah, he's burnt out so much of the his nostrils now. He needs the straw to be that thick in order to sort of even get a hit. I mean, it's sort of.
I think Ebit's blood he uses that for.
It's anyway. Probably Kissinger was the one who called us great unwashed masses sort of useless eaters, didn't he? Which gives you a handle on his kind of philosophy about mankind in general. I mean, talking about globalists and Bilderberg, which is what we were discussing before. It's sort of, I do think these meetings take place on an annual basis. I think they've been going on since 1954, and the reason why they have attributed the Bilderberg label is because it took place in Holland for the first time in the Bilderberg Hotel back in 1954 or whatever it was, and they've just used that label to describe this particular meeting that basically takes place in hotels anywhere, dotted around the world, these luxury resort hotels, which then get surrounded by, security and intelligence people when all these dignitaries turn up. And it consists of, most of the heads of corporations, banks, royalty, aristocracy, the political elite, politicians. I mean, Cameron was summoned there, as are a lot of presidents and prime ministers, basically given their brief for the year ahead. This is the plan. This is what you've got to basically try to implement. A lot of people would argue against this theory and say that I'm just being a conspiracist as usual. But it does seem odd, does it not, that some of the most powerful, influential people are allowed to meet. If you ever ask them, people like Luke Rudkowski, I don't know if anybody's aware of Luke Rudkowski. He's somebody I follow on social media. He's another kind of independent journalist who goes out and pursues the truth. And I think he's really cool, and he's there at Bloomberg at the moment. So if you're interested in getting a sort of an alternative view on Bilderberg, then sign up for Luke Rudkowski's YouTube or Facebook channel, and you'll get his updated reports about what's going on at the moment there. But he interviewed various Bilderbergers in previous years, and was saying, what gets discussed and what's the format? Why aren't the public told about what gets discussed? And even some of the British politicians that have been asked this question. Ken Clarke was asked this question. He said it's just an opportunity for us to get together and have a chat off the record, because a lot of the stuff we discuss is quite sensitive, and if it's in a public setting, obviously those people don't feel they can speak as candidly as they might if it was behind closed doors, which makes perfectly good sense, really. But and we do love to sort of, I'll admit that I do myself love to sort of demonize and turn all the elite into sort of boogeymen who are sort of drinking babies' blood and roasting them over an open fire, in the background. And is there any element of truth in that? Well, I don't know. I do think that the globalists, the Bilderberg organization are the men behind the curtain. I do believe that the political elite are bought and paid for by the large corporations and banks. The likes of Juncker and his crew running the European Parliament are basically bought and paid for by these people. So these people do set the modus operandi. They do make the decisions and set the agenda for the year ahead, and people, they summons these individuals to these meetings that are, where we're not party to what gets discussed. I think the whole thing is, very conspiratorial and very, very weird. I do believe that our politicians are heavily influenced by corporations and banks. And I think, as we've discussed over the course of the last century, I think that's been the case. And I think many of the reasons we've been given for going to war, whether it be the First World War or the Second World War. The First World War started around the time that the...
Piers, for God's sake, mate, do you realise? I tell you, I put my mic on mute, and I left it on mute just to see how long you'd carry on for. And I had to come back. I thought eventually he's gonna twig that I've buggered off, which I did as well because I had to get the phone. And
I thought you were just leaving me to it. I thought you were just.
You're amazing. I'll tell you, Piers. You just come with a button and you press go and there you go. I'll tell you, you are a content manager's dream for radio. Amazing. What you were saying was fascinating. It was, and I was listening. I just wondered how long you'd go on for. Eventually I thought I've got to go back.
I got one of Henry Kissinger's lines, mate. That's why I can't stop talking. I've got a motor mouthing. I'm like, I've just, I've got hold of his cane, man. I've just tipped out some on the table. And I'm like, I've just like cracked some out and sniffed it, and it's like, oh man, I'm racing right now. I'm on one. Henry and I, can you imagine? He gets him out of his wheelchair, and he starts dancing around Bilderberg, with his roasted baby, ripping off limbs and chowing down.
Oh man!
I mean, when's he going to die? Why can't he just do us all a favour and die?
Brzezinski died this week, didn't he? What's his name?
Lumendag, Brzezinski bloke, the guy that said things like, "You're all going to die," and stuff like that. I mean, he was kind of like a bit mini Kissinger. He wasn't quite as extreme. He wasn't quite as nasty in some of the things he said, but nonetheless, he still basically wanted us all to kind of die. But yeah, he's gone. So that's one less pushing up the roses. And
oh yeah, of course, one of the
got to be on the way.
Yeah, I mean, they are all getting so long in the tooth. I mean, it's like it's crazy. I mean, anybody else would have retired years ago, but they just
in the White House.
I mean, do they all sleep? Do they all sleep in coffins? I mean, you kind of it's almost like they're all living in some sort of vampiric kind of coven, or what are they called? What groups of vampires are called? Is it a coven? A vampire?
So that's witches.
Yeah, a witches' coven. Vampires live in a
castle.
Is it a flock of vampires?
I don't know. No idea. Flock of seagulls. That was a fairly good band.
What is the term used for vampires that hang out together? You go to their. Anyway, yeah, I mean, it's almost like you can almost see Kissinger and Bush Senior and all that lot, kind of, the coffin lid opening and their assistants coming in with a nice little glass of fresh baby's blood, to give them a snifter in the morning to sort of pep them up and get them out of bed. And then sort of rising out of the coffin sort of in one straight movement, and then sort of floating across the bedroom floor where somebody's there to dress them and I don't know, put on their pneumatic body armor to keep them moving or whatever it is. I mean, they should all be dead or fishing. What the hell are they doing? Still influencing? I mean, they do say that older people are wise, but.
Yeah, and some are just evil. I mean, I agree with that. I respect my elders in general. I really do, because I mean, it's pretty bloody obvious, isn't it, that as you get older, you gain experience, which is why this whole argument about this thing I saw on BBC Newsnight the other night, talking again, having a go about Brexit, and they've got a studio audience of 18-year-olds or whatever, and half of that. And half are sort of old people who all seem to actually be chosen, who had a sort of a pro-Remain chat about them, which I thought was very curious. But they were basically saying, these elderly people, they're nearly dead. They shouldn't really have the same right to discuss the future of the country. Well, I didn't realize that people came with a sell-by date is point one. But also, I think that people who have got an experience of life have got something to offer us. I mean, setting aside the George Herbert Walker Bushes of this world, these utter horrid people. There are, generally speaking, a lot of everybody's got something to offer anyway. And if you're an older person, a friend of mine, American guy who managed to vote in the referendum, he not even British. It's a long story, but this is demographic engineering. He managed to vote in that. And he was saying to me how he thought it was unfair that elderly people had swayed the vote. I said, well, hold on a sec. Let me just get this right. For a start, you're not even British, and you're criticizing the demographic that actually had a legitimate right to vote. But also, you're telling me that my mom, whose parents put out the fires in London during the Blitz on those Victorian terrace houses that you now are investing in and making hundreds of thousands of quid by being able to invest in that property, thanks to their effort keeping London, more or less intact during the Blitz. You're saying that these people shouldn't have a say in their own country? I just find that. I know I've gone off on one, Piers. I know. Look,
no, but you're right. You're so right. What did we fight the World War II, I and II for? If it wasn't for self-determination. That was the only reason, was it? But if it wasn't for the right to self-determination and freedom, to make our own choices and decisions, I mean, this is basically what the European Union is taking away from us. I mean, they use the excuse that the only way we can function as a working society is if we just dissolve our borders
and avoid war. They say as well. They keep saying that, don't they? The only way to keep peace in Europe.
Well, you see, it is nonsense. It's just smokescreen after smokescreen. It's all part of the globalist plan to just sort of. They basically want to turn Europe into the United States of Europe. The United States of America, where Italy, Spain, France have the same status as any of the states in the American Union currently. I mean, basically lose your country status and become a state in the United States of Europe, probably with Angela Merkel as president of the United States of Europe. And then
in all but name.
Yeah. I mean, she is all but effectively in all but name now.
That's right.
I mean, I love reading conspiracy theorist stuff like I don't know if anybody's familiar with Benjamin Fulford. And
they probably are, some of them. Yeah,
he does a weekly. Yeah, he does his weekly post, doesn't he? Which is always quite interesting.
I've asked him on the show.
He'd be great. He'd be great. He thinks that Angela Merkel is Adolf Hitler's daughter.
That's a bit of a stretch, isn't it?
Apparently Hitler went to South America and didn't die after the Second World War. They faked his
death.
That's
right. I've heard that. Went to Bariloche or something in Argentina.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, Chris Tarrant went on a rail. Did some traveling on a program for Channel 5. Where he went on the railroads in Argentina, and he went through Patagonia, and the guy was telling him this story about this is the train that Hitler used to sort of travel on.
Really?
And apparently he died when he was 80.
Oh, that's when he was the ticket inspector. Because didn't he go over there to become a ticket inspector?
No, I don't think he went to be a ticket inspector. Okay. I think he shaved his little moustache off and started selling kebabs in
Would you like a ticket? They have ways of selling you the ticket. Sorry, carry on. Yeah, no, he didn't do that.
If you do not buy,
that is fake, very, very fake. Sorry.
If you do not buy your tickets, you will be shot. But no, he didn't go. I don't think he went over there to be a ticket guy. But, anyway,
he went over there to go to Bariloche, and basically to hide in the mountains. And it's an amazing place, very dramatic. They make chocolate and everything. Very nice place, Bariloche.
They probably wear lederhosen as well, with nothing else. Lederhosen with no underwear or shirt, so it's probably like a kink in that part of Argentina.
Well, mate, now we're coming back to British politics, actually, as well, aren't we? Look, hold on. Anyway. I need to have an intermission. I need just a sec, Piers. Yeah, I do. It's got. Hold on. What it is. I mentioned this call business at the top of the show.
Oh, yeah.
We've had these problems with call-ins. We've had people trying to call and they can't get through, and they probably think that I'm rude because I'm not picking up the phone. And it turns out this has been going on for the entirety of this show, pretty much. Largely, it was because of my ineptitude, because I had an incorrect setting on Skype that didn't allow any calls.
Dude.
And then when I changed that setting a few weeks ago, I then got 3 calls in one show. And I'll tell you, I nearly wet myself. I was so excited, but I didn't realize until after the show. And then it was obviously too late to take the calls. And I've been trying to work out why. So when you were going off on your monologue, which was beautiful, Piers, a few months ago, I went to get the phone and I called the studio. We're on Studio B here, yeah? There's 2 studios with radio, and we're delegated to Studio B. And excuse me, and I tried calling it to see that it would come through to my Skype. You're just using my landline phone, yeah. And it didn't. It just rang, and eventually it cut off. And so I tried calling. Now I'm hoping that there's some of the elders from Revolution Radio here, some of the folks that understand the servers a bit better than I do. So that could be you, Mr. Rowe, for example, if you're about, sir. God bless you. And I know you helped me out. You've been trying to help me out, and I appreciate that. So has Ahmad Painter and Patrick and Mona and Willow. Yeah, I tell you, we've got some lovely folks around here. They're so cool. But yes, so bottom line is I tried calling I didn't get any response. And so I thought I would just ringing. So I thought I'll try the other studio, Studio A. And I thought it actually would be funny to say, this is Studio B calling Studio A. Hey, how are you doing? But they didn't pick up either. So I
don't know, but I'm just saying because we're trying to work out this technical issues.
Yeah, it'd be really nice to have some others interacting with us, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, we did have a couple of calls a few weeks back.
Susan from California, bless her.
she was great. Susan was
Yeah,
fap. She was the dog groomer from California. No, she was great. I used to really enjoy chatting to her. But no, it'd be great to have some other calls. I don't know whether it is to do with this sort of hack, this global hack that took place. Clearly,
I don't know. Apparently, you get on Skype. You mustn't. People, apparently, you shouldn't be opening any attachments on Skype unless you are absolutely sure that you trust the source. So if you get something sent to you, an attachment on Skype, don't open it unless you're really sure, because apparently this thing is not restricted purely to Windows XP, which was the story that I think was going around. All the NHS, the National Health Service computers affected were XP, for example. I understand from our folks here at Rev Radio that actually it can affect pretty much any Windows system. And hold on, he's taking a pee now.
No. I was just washing my hands.
He's washing his hands.
I was just washing my hands. Yeah, no, I just wanted to sort of rinse my fingers.
This is an honest.
Sticky.
Yes. So yes. Anyway, blimey, yeah. But we'll try and work that out. But I will take that feedback back to our Mr. Rowe here and see if I can sort this out, because that would add a really nice dynamic to the show, I think, if you could have regular callers, and just get a bit more of the perspective of the people, from around the world. We can witter away to our heart's content, but it's also quite nice to sort of add others to the equation too. So get on it, Ol. See if you can sort it, man. Do it. Well, I just made a note to the host chat on Skype to let people know, and maybe we can get this worked out. I don't know, blah, blah. Look, just one other thing, as a bit of an aside, something that's related to this is that, we have had some technical problems with this wonderful radio network. And it does obviously cost a few quid to keep the lights on, keep the service running. And we don't, any of us take any money out of this. So if you got a few quid, if you can afford it, if you can't, don't worry about it. Just enjoy it. But if you can, please, just if you send us, whatever you can, and that'll be fantastic. There's a donate page on the website, freedomslips.com, etc. And so that's enough of the production notes. Piers, when's the false flag gonna?
What do you mean? Well, what are my thoughts on the Manchester attack? I mean, it was interesting that they as with the attack in London that occurred at around the same time as 9/11. They've been planning, the intelligence services. They've been doing kind of mock attack scenarios just literally a few days before the Manchester bombing occurred, where
really?
Where they were, creating scenarios, sort of terror scenarios, drills, exactly. That just seemed to be, incredibly well timed. So it meant that
there was one on the day of the massive atrocity in London in 2005, wasn't there? There was a drill going on at the same time, just as there had been on 9/11
in America. Yeah, exactly. There was a huge, massive homeland security exercise going on. So
coincidence, I'm sure.
Oh, of course, absolutely. Just
makes you wonder.
Well, they found Mohammed Atta's. What is it? Mohammed Atta? I can't remember the name of the terrorist. The lead terrorist. They found his passport in the rubble. What a load of rubbish. I mean, the Twin Towers fall down, and they conveniently find the lead terrorist's passport in the rubble. I mean,
no engine parts.
Just how stupid do they think people are? It's just quite extraordinary. Anyway, we're not going to get into 9/11 now, are we? No, let's not.
We're gonna carry on trying to, I don't know, having a laugh at the expense of British politics, because I mean it is, man. I mean, I can't really take it. I'm not. I hear what Mark says, but I don't really agree that
it's necessarily as innocent as it seems. I mean, for example, Cameron, looking at this connection with Bilderberg, not that dissimilar. Again, looking at this connection between the two of them, Cameron, at the Watford Bilderberg meeting, which was a few years ago, Cameron was prime minister then. We know that he went to see Kissinger. The media actually were resolute enough to ask him for some minutes or some kind of detail of those meetings, and he said, "No, you're not going to get any of that. It's completely off the record." And that was it. And we didn't hear anything more. We didn't hear the press complaining about it either.
Yeah. Well, George, no, exactly. I mean, George Osborne's still a member, and now he's the editor of the Evening Standard, and a signed up
journalism.
Blair's a Bilderberger, Peter Mandelson's a Bilderberger, Ken Clarke's a Bilderberger. There's a long list of very influential British politicians that go pretty much every year. I mean, if that doesn't sort of smell suspicious and fishy, I don't know what does. I do think that. It
could be a good old knees up with Henry.
I think
having a dance around his,
they've got the lap dancing girls out.
They dance around his wheelchair.
Well, then they get his Colombian marching powder out, what he's got left over from his stash from his Escobar days, they've had a fresh shipment flown over by the CIA, the CIA have been caught smuggling drugs across the border, the Mexican-American border, and they've said, this is all to do with national security, and they've been given a green light to carry on because of who they are. But they've been hauling tons of cocaine.
It's a massive meth lab. That's what Bilderberg is. They produce meths. Just a
It's Breaking Bad. Breaking Bad. They get together once a year to do the biggest cook-up ever. They're all absolutely off their nuts on meth. They're kind of like, they're all storming around, sort of bashing heads, like charging rhinos or something. It's sort of like they're all so off their fucking. Sorry, I shouldn't swear. Nuts on the
they
stuff.
Would be safer. We'd be safer if that was the case. I wish they were. I wish they were drug addicts.
Yeah, can you imagine? The head of Goldman Sachs or Credit Suisse or UBS or something, just sort of rutting like stags, bashing antlers and getting locked up because they're just fueled on just every possible drug known to humanity. I don't know. It would make it more entertaining, wouldn't it? But unfortunately, I do think these guys are sort of planning. They are globalists and they are, pursuing the globalist agenda. What's going to work best for everybody combined, within the organization, and how we're going to influence our bought and paid for politicians to carry out the recipe we have planned for the year going ahead. There's been a lot of press speculation about whether Donald Trump's going to get summons to this meeting, and whether or not they're going to sort of, even The Guardian wrote an article about this today that sort of suggested that Donald was going to go and be bent over a chair and have his bottom spanked. Because of
go on, Henry.
He was a really bad school report, and that because he's not strictly following the globalist desire to for. Originally when Trump was getting elected, he was very anti the EU, and now he seems to have sort of mellowed in his stance towards the EU, and he's changed his tunes. It just goes to show, doesn't it? Politicians will literally say and do anything to get elected, and then literally anything. They'll literally lie through their teeth. We all know they lie all the time, non-stop. In fact, I think if one of them actually told the truth, it kind of might make them sort of spontaneously combust or something. They've got so used to lying for a living, they might actually accidentally tell the truth one day because they've, the lie has sort of led them round to a truth that they weren't predicting they were going to say. I don't know, but it's sort of anyway. Trump lied to get elected, and now is reneging on so many of his promises. I'm sure this. I'll be pleased if the wall doesn't get built. I think that's the most insanely ridiculous idea I've ever heard in my life. Building a giant wall between Mexico and America. I think that's absolute insane.
Yeah. Absolutely. Incredible.
All about. I mean, it's just the most mind-numbingly insane idea I've ever heard.
We this British thing is really the theme, Piers. But you have got a point. No. I mean, this is so important. Do you think that? I just wonder. I'm still wondering. I said I'd give him 100 days. The 100 days went, and it was still a little bit murky as to whether or not he was following his mandate. I just wonder. I mean, draining the swamp kind of mandate, yeah. Everything else, frankly, I don't care particularly. It's a bit like the general election in the UK, Brexit. That's the issue. I don't really care about anything else. I do. I'm worried that, for example, the Tory government will take advantage and introduce all sorts of legislation. So, nasty stuff on the side if she gets a big majority landslide, but I don't know that's going to happen anyway. But it's a similar thing, isn't it? It's the thing so far as Trump's concerned. Yeah, these things worry me. I'm concerned seeing him with the Saudis. I'm concerned seeing him calling Netanyahu Bibi. On the other hand, I'm very pleased to see that he has decided not to move the embassy into Jerusalem. That is symbolically very important, I think, for this world, for everybody. That's my opinion. Anyway, but I'm concerned about those things. On the other hand, I'm also thinking, but if draining the swamp has got to be such a huge, complicated, fraught with concern, not least whether or not you're going to get knocked off, JFK style, so difficult to achieve that maybe he has to appease certain nasty factions. He has to zigzag, go around the houses. The straight line isn't necessarily the fastest.
I think one of the things that might get discussed, because we've got Comey being pulled in for another interview, haven't we? About the Clinton Foundation emails and probably Seth Rich as well. I mean, Seth Rich is this guy who worked for the DNC. For Hillary, he was working on her campaign, and it's now been suggested. I think his parents, basically employed a private detective to look into his murder, and it seems becoming increasingly apparent that he was the one leaking the thousands of emails to WikiLeaks. I mean, Julian Assange hasn't actually. He refuses to name his leads. And won't won't confirm one way or the other if Seth Rich was one of his contacts. But it seems increasingly apparent that he was, and that this constant blaming of by the Democrats on blaming the Russians for everything, all their failures and all the rest of it. It's just absurd. I mean, they're even blaming Nigel Farage now. They've pulled Farage in.
I know.
They've pulled him into this as well, saying that
they said he's on a list.
Yeah, he's on FBI list of a person of interest.
Person of interest.
Relating
I'll tell you,
to
anybody on this planet, on Facebook anyway, for example, who is not on a list, people of interest. You're doing something wrong. If you're not on a list, get on a list. Everybody should be on a list. I hate to think how many lists I'm on.
I should think. Yeah, I should think. I mean, it's only. I don't know how many people listen to this show. I mean, it's very. It's very.
Nobody. It's only you and me.
We're literally just shouting at each other. This is we're kind of enthusiastically talking about putting the world to rights, and not a soul is actually listening. Can you imagine? Hi world. Actually the world consists of you.
It's an organic thing. It'll go viral.
I think people do listen, don't they? I mean, you get a few comments on.
I know people are listening.
They are. There's a few out there. I should think we are on a watch list of some description or another. Yeah, for sure. I think if we started to reach a significant number of people, then maybe our lives would be made more difficult. I don't know. It depends on how. There's probably a a marker point, of influence. This is why they like to bump off, wayward celebrities, because they have multiples of millions of people following them on Twitter and things, and if they sort of fall out of line and start sort of becoming a bit more conspiratorial, then obviously they become a problem to the establishment, and might meet with some rather unfortunate accident, which tends to be the case. But I don't know if our level of influence has stretched to that kind of level, that degree yet. Although I should think, as you burgeon on with the show, I'm sure that'll happen at some point.
Well, I don't know.
Who knows? Yeah. Who knows? But yeah, I think we do.
I mean, it's a laugh, isn't it? It's a laugh.
Yeah, we do. I mean, you do have an audience. I'm sure. And I think it's great that we can discuss. We can have sensible guests on like Mark, who is a little bit more kind of traditional and not quite as conspiratorial as you or me and your good self. But it's good to thrash out these alternative perspectives, I think, because I do think that the world is run and governed by a sort of club of elites who dictate to the sort of lower level prime ministers and presidents, and Trump is, may well attend Bilderberg, and maybe he'll be, this sort of witch hunt that's going on with the FBI and Comey and Seth Rich and all that sort of stuff might get discussed. I don't know what the globalist standpoint all that would be, because one would assume that if the Clinton Foundation was as corrupt as people are beginning to make out, and I personally think it was. I think the Clinton Foundation.
Well, we know they were getting money from the Saudis. I mean, if that isn't an inducement to treason, I don't know what is. But anyway, carry on.
There's also stories about it being used as a front to launder drug cartel money as well. So the CIA, in conjunction with the South American drug cartels, were bringing in large quantities of cash from cocaine sales and filtering it into the Clinton Foundation in Arkansas. And it was being laundered there, and then some of the funds were being used to allow the Clintons political gain. They basically, they've grown the foundation into a giant money laundering and bribery, basically taking bribes from rich people and foreign governments to influence positions, their positions with the American government and with the growing Clinton's power and influence over. They've basically bribed everyone. I mean, they've got the whole of the Senate and Congress on their payroll. The Clintons are untouchable because literally, if they go down and the Clinton Foundation goes down, the whole of the American government goes down. Literally, it's sort of like the whole system would just literally cease to stop working. I mean,
do you think? Okay, this is a fascinating. Okay, we've only got a few minutes left, yeah, but this is more interesting than the theme. The theme was crap. The theme was not crap. It was wonderful, but we've kind of covered it. And you know what? They're all basically a bit useless. Hopefully, we're going to get Brexit. This is fascinating though. If everything was to go down, let's say that there was an EMP attack or something, and it happened, basically everything went down. Now, I know that's serious. I know that is very, very serious. Riots, food shortages, etc., etc. God knows what would happen in the big cities. No sanitation. I mean, just absolutely nothing. But on the other hand, there is an argument to say we'd actually be better off for this nasty problem and to be rid of. I know that's not going to happen anyway. I know it's not going to happen. What is going to happen is, it seems to me we're either going to get some kind of improved democracy, which is the way it's looking at the moment, all in all, at least across Europe, because the EU's going down, therefore increased democracy, because we'll actually be, our overlords will be people that, hey, guess what? We voted for, and that probably are even the same nationality. Speak the same language. Wow, what a nice idea. So there's that, but the alternative is really horrid, huh? I mean, the kind of false flag that they would have to pull out to keep things on the current trajectory towards a globalized, global governance.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think we are living.
That doesn't bear thinking about.
No, we are living.
Particularly, Piers, particularly with automation coming in. Because the God's honest truth is that Henry Kissinger, again, the third time we've mentioned this thing, useless eaters. Well, we really are useless then, aren't we? Because the robots can do all of the stuff that we can do, near us, damn it.
Yeah. I think the globalist agenda is to reduce. I mean, if you look at the guidestones, the Georgia guidestones. I mean, it says, reduce the world's population to 500 million, living in harmony and in perpetuity with nature. So they are their environmental policy is basically human population reduction, because they see humans as the main problem the Earth faces in terms of pollution. So if you kill off the vast majority of us and then control the rest, that you can allow great swathes of the world to be returned to nature and have giant urbanized population centers, a bit like in Judge Dredd or in the Hunger Games, where the elite live in sort of luxury and the rest of us are just sort of serfs being used for whatever jobs are left that the robots aren't doing. I think that is basically their plan. I do believe there are a lot of people out there who are now.
You're very conspiratorial, though, aren't you?
Well, no, I mean, it says on the gorge, somebody built a very expensive monument in Georgia, and wrote that mantra in God knows how many different languages. I mean, I don't know whether it's just a giant farce or whether or not it actually has some merit, but I do believe that is the globalist agenda. I mean, you've got thousands of people, of merit. Even David Attenborough went on his show and said, he likens humans to a sort of like a virus or a plague. Yeah. I think he called us a plague.
He's the guy that does all the nature docs in the UK. He's been doing it for about 80 years, and he's about 160 years old. He's actually he's a bit like another one of these old boys that wants to die and come back as a virus sort of thing.
Yeah, he's well known in the States. But I do believe that is, well,
you can have him. If you want him, you can have him.
No, he's cool. But I mean,
he's an arse. I've interviewed him. He's an arse. Oh, his brother, Dickie Attenborough, he was so lovely. He's a cool guy. You know, the guy that directed Gandhi and all that? He was good fun. But no, maybe David Attenborough just took exception to me. I don't know.
Dickie Attenborough was in Jurassic Park, wasn't he? It was.
I thought he was. I thought they were both Jurassic Park.
They were. He was the old boy that set up and owned the park, and sort of. He had a walking stick in that as well. I bet that was a coke pipe as well. He's probably getting together with Kissinger and doing massive lines. Oh, you're gonna come to my new park, Henry. Oh, yeah, I'm coming, man. I want to see a T-Rex. Yeah, I'm gonna snort a huge line of Charlie off a T-Rex's back until he bites my head off. I don't know, but
he wouldn't be, mate, because he's dead. He died a few years ago.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
but just a lighten.
I do think to on a sort of slightly more optimistic note, I do think there are a lot of people fighting for the good of humanity, and I think we have reached a stage where we could end up seeing a lot of truth and ultimately tribunals. If the Hillary scandal does prove to be true and comes out, then all hell will break loose. And obviously the globalists, who are having this Bilderberg meeting now, will be discussing all of this sort of stuff, the implications of revelations that the truths coming out in the public and the ramifications of those truths. This is all sort of going to be discussed. This is going to be on there.
They're lovely. Bilderberg, they're nice. They're
well, I'm hoping that we will prevail. I'm hoping humanity.
There must be white hats there too. There must be. I can't believe that. It's good. I don't know. Well, no, they're gits. Horrid.
They've got the lap dancers out at the moment. They've got the champagne on the go. The lap dance. Henry Kissinger's got some 20-year-old lap dancer in the lap at the moment.
Listening to Revolution Radio.